Hi, I'm Quentin Schultz, a communications scholar, a public speaker, a retired college professor, though I still do some teaching, a consultant in communication, and many other communication-related activities. I love communication. I love public speaking. I'm the author of this, among other books, An Essential Guide to Public Speaking. An Essential Guide to Public Speaking. Now, with this video in my series on public speaking, I'm going to do something a little bit different than I have before. I'm going to make available on my website the appendix from my book that talks about how to use slideware like PowerPoint wisely and well. I'm going to make that available free. It'll be on my website. You'll have to put an email address in there to verify. I can't just put it up there in public because people will then distribute it elsewhere online, and the publisher doesn't want me to do that. So from my book, An Essential Guide to Public Speaking, I'll have partly what I'm talking about here and then some additional information available free. There will be a link down below that will say click here in order to get the free information from my website, and you can go there and grab it. I'm happy to. That'll be sort of my handout for this presentation, though you don't have to look at that before you see the presentation. What I'm talking about today is using slideware. I like the term slideware rather than PowerPoint because there are different technologies and PowerPoint is just one of them. But we're talking about using essentially slides in some form with or without sound effects and music and the like, and we're talking about these being projected up on a screen in a venue where you're speaking, okay? Now, I have used this many times, this kind of technology. In fact, predating PowerPoint, I was doing this kind of thing. And I know something about the strengths and the weaknesses. What I want to do in this video in particular is talk with you about when to use slideware. And I'm assuming you should not always use it. Now, let me tell you right up front, the most important visuals in any presentation that you do have nothing to do with projection, slideware, PowerPoint. The most important visualization has to do with you. Your face, your hands, all of your nonverbal stuff. Your body, in a sense, is the primary medium that you are using when you're doing public speaking, your body. So you need to attend to your body. The body is very important. If you don't know anything about acting, especially stage acting, let me just tell you, a lot of it is the body. You have to learn how to use your body. So that's number one. That's not the subject of this video, but I want you to know up front that if you are using slideware as an alternative to learning well how to use your body, you are making a mistake up front. You're over-relying on a technology to do the job, and it's actually going to take away from the influence, the power of what you're trying to do as a communicator, and you will not serve your audience as well. So we're talking about when to use it, when to use slideware. Number one, if a large visual is needed, you need to use a large visual in order to show or demonstrate something, then you want to use it. That's number one, a large one. I've been in many situations where people had something that they wanted to show as an example, like holding up something from the newspaper or a magazine or a little prop they have of some kind, and they really needed that to be larger so everybody could see it and see it well projected. That alone is a reason to use slideware, a good one. So consider that. Don't use something that's so small that it doesn't serve the purpose at all. Project it. Great use. Number two, if handouts are too small or the handouts cannot be copied legally or it would require expensive color printing. In other words, I'm saying here handouts are great. I like to use handouts, but if handouts cannot work here because they would be too small, they can't be copied legally, or they require some kind of expensive color printing because the color's important, then you've got a good basis for using slideware. Now, a note here on my personal approach whenever I'm using slideware that has much text in it is to also have paper handouts available for people to take notes on. Now that's a personal preference, but I often go there for one basic reason, and you know what that reason is. The technology can fail you. And when slideware fails, you can be in deep trouble fast if you're overly dependent upon it. So beware, beware. Have paper backups. If needed, and you have them, you're going to be so glad that you had them along. So I normally have those available. Sometimes I'll hand it out. That's another whole video to get into here. I'm looking at just the reasons to use it now, rather than the ancillary material that we give out along with it. Number 3, we use slideware when a particular sentence, words, or visuals needs to be shown repeatedly. So you want repetition. You want what's often called an advertising frequency. You want something up there again and again and again. Here's the point. We are visual learners, all of us. You've all had this experience where you've taken a test, let's say. You know, I've taught college for years, and the students will say to me, boy, I can't remember the answer to that, but I remember where it was on the page. I can see it on the page. I just can't remember what it was. We are visual remembering creatures to a large extent. So, you've got something, maybe it's a phrase that you want to get through again and again and again. Let's say you're at an organization, you have a new mission statement, a new vision statement, and you want people to start memorizing it and remembering it. You show it again and again. Okay, so that's that kind of repetition. The frequency is another reason to do it. Another reason, a fourth reason, is when the audience includes people with hearing difficulties, and maybe the venue lacks hearing-assisted technologies. Yeah, you heard me right. I hope you heard me right. There are many venues where you cannot hear well, or maybe what you're trying to do does not work well in the audio there. I mean, even the difference between a wired mic and a wireless mic can make big differences in what people can and can't hear. And people who are on the edge a little bit with hearing may not be able to hear well. Letting them see it too at the same time is really, really important in those situations. Now, I'm a big advocate of having all of, at least our public venues, wired with the so-called T-coil in the hearing aids so that somebody can flip the switch and they can hear really well. But in the United States, not all venues have that, public or private. So pay attention to this. If you're speaking to an audience that's significantly made up of older people, then you might consider the importance of also showing what it is that you're saying. You're not going to show all of the text. You never want to do that. But this is a good reason for using slideware, to help get across visually the text that you're also having as your main points or your outline points. Okay, number 5. When copies of the slideware presentation will be made available later to attendees in digital or print formats. When the copies will be made available later rather than at the time. There are pedagogical or teaching, communication reasons why you don't want to give out all kinds of paper at the time and have people looking at the paper when you want them looking up at the slide or looking at you. And so often this stuff comes out later. And in those situations, you especially want to be able to use the slideware because you can't depend on having them looking at what it is you're handing out. My preference always is to do both, to have the paper versions of the slides there for them to look at and make notes on, and also the slideware itself projected up. But in some cases, you can't quite do it that way. Okay, so these are reasons why we should use slideware, the good situations to use slideware. But always remember that the most important thing is what you're doing with your body. Even if it's something like a webinar where it's primarily just your face, how you look, your countenance is very, very important. Our body is the principal visual. And then these other we add on. Don't just assume you should always use slideware. Look at the reasons I've given you here And if it fits into one of those 5 reasons, go for it. I think you've got a good basis for it. Again, the appendix for my book will be available free. See the link down below. Now, if you've liked this particular video, give it a thumbs up. If not, give me a thumbs down. If you're interested in my book, An Essential Guide to Public Speaking, there will be a link down below to that on Amazon as well. Please subscribe to this channel. Go to my website if you would and subscribe there, or go to my website and send me a personal note. You can get direct access to my email address on there. I love to hear from people about things they'd like to communicate with me about privately as well. So, slideware, yes, not always. Have good reasons for it. Thank you for tuning in.